Okay, I think that we're rolling. Hey, look at that. Kind of without a hitch, so that's fun. All right. Welcome. It is a rather recently rainy Sunday morning here at the headquarters. It was fine, and we had windows open and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden it started to rain a lot, and I didn't want to leave the windows open because the extra rain noises, though lovely, would have potentially made several of you have to go to the bathroom. You know what I mean? Like a lot of water running noises, and it was quite rainy. And so kind of closed up the windows, but now it's stopped, but it's going to keep doing this on and off till sometime in the early afternoon. And then it's supposed to be lovely after that, so I'm looking forward to it. I hope everybody else is doing well. We've got some people coming in from California, Australia. What else have we got? Denmark, Calgary, Poland, Las Vegas, Scotland, Texas, Finland. What else have we got? Cleveland, Ohio, Poland, Northern Germany, Newcastle. What else have we got in here? South Australia, another Poland, Slovakia. So, yeah, I hope everybody's doing well this morning, or afternoon, or evening, depending on where you're coming in from. Florida. What else have we got? Italy, from Turin. Texas, Kentucky, Pennsylvania. Afternoon from a not-so-sunny part of Poland. Well, you know, it's not so sunny right here and right now, but in theory, later on this afternoon, it's supposed to be sunny, which will be nice because we're having people over in the afternoon for my birthday, so that'll be lovely. As long as it doesn't rain, it should be great. Gonna be looking forward to that. Pittsburgh, Iowa, Swindon, the Netherlands, North Carolina, Italy, more Germany, Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, by the way. That's always fun to say. Spokane, Washington. St. Louis. Chaos, you say? Nothing like some heresy to start your Sunday. No, that's true. It's very true. Yeah, definitely. We'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. But got Brooklyn. Jez says, it is your birthday? It's almost my birthday. It's very close. So, yeah. Today was the day to decide to have the party just to make it easy for people. So, yeah. Thank you for the birthday wishes. I appreciate it. So, yeah. So, spent a good portion of yesterday getting things cleaned up for people to come over and everything, all that kind of stuff. Did not get any hobbying done. I was kind of hoping to in the evening, but was just, frankly, a little bit too tuckered out. So, but otherwise, the last week has been pretty good for hobby. I've been working on, speaking of chaos, I've been working on something called a Helldrake, which you guys are probably, if you pay attention to 40K at all, Helldrake is this weird kind of chaos dragon bird flyer thing. It's Chaos's flyer. They don't really have any other ones. They don't have like 12 different flyers to choose from like some armies. So I've had it for years, and it's been built but unpainted. So now that 8th edition is going, and I've got like 3/4 of a Chaos army already kind of basically finished with some touch-ups and tweaks, I decided, well, I should probably bring, the big old Hell Turkey in to be part of the army, and which means he needs to get painted. I'm assuming it's a he. I don't know. I mean, I respect his or her privacy, so I don't know. But anyway, so there's a lot of trim little chaosy symbols and shenanigans all over that damn bird. So I don't want to show it yet because it's not really done. It's a work in progress. But when it's done, I'll probably show it on the what do you call it? The thing, the Paint Showcase Club on Facebook, or I'll show it here eventually. Yes. Don Wanna says Demon Prince is a flyer. Well, Demon Prince can fly, but is technically not a flyer, like the symbol next to him in the book is not flyer. So he's, but he can, well, he's more like, see, that's what's interesting now is that you have like things that can fly, like jump troops can fly, demon prince can fly, but they're not considered to be flyers. So it's kind of different. But he's the Helldrake is interesting in that he's not super crazy fast like a lot of flyers, but on the other hand, he also doesn't have that minimum distance thing that he's got to do. One of the things that they changed is with 8th edition is that now there are certain flyers that if you want to be going really quick, you can go really quick, but you have to go at least, let's say, 20 inches. But you could go up to 60 inches. If you want to start going into like hover mode, then you don't have to go the minimum of 20 inches. The Helldrake does not have the ability to go 60 inch. He's almost kind of like always in hover mode, so he's not as hard to hit as some of the faster vehicles, some of the faster flyers. But he is still considered a flyer as far as troop classification or whatever is considered. But yeah. So let's see here. Joey G says, how many hours a day do you work on your hobby? Well, I try to do at least a couple if I can. Like there's certain days I just can't because I'm doing other things or whatever, like going to visit family or whatever. And of course, I've got a normal day job and all that kind of jazz. But yeah, definitely like if I can, like if things work out well, I come home from work, eat dinner and all that kind of stuff, spend time with my wife. And then I try to get into the basement by like 7 or 8 sometimes, and then I'm down there till at least 10 or 11, hopefully. If I can, that's like a not bad day. On the weekends, there's times I can go a good deal longer and spend more time doing hobby stuff. So yeah, that's fun too. Excuse me. Six Gunner asks, Uncle Adam, are you going to do an Age of Sigmar 2-year anniversary show? Oh, that's a good question. It's coming up, isn't it? Because it was July of 2015. Yeah, I guess it was. That's a good question. I may have to. I'll have to look into that. Let's see here. Agent Kajeos. I murdered that. Sorry. Nurgle got some flyers in the starter as well, I think. Well, there's the fetid bloat drone, which I was calling the fetid blight drone for a long time because I'm like, they've got a bunch of other stuff that's called blight, but actually he's the fetid bloat drone. I looked at it more closely, and he has the ability to fly, but he's not a flyer specifically. He's more of a, I don't know, he's fast attack, I think, actually. Jack Boyd says there is a Forge World flyer for Chaos, the Hell Talon. I believe that's true as well. Yeah, and that looks kind of like a fighter aircraft, but I've never really seen one of those. I mean, I've never seen one in person. I've just seen the pictures, and I haven't looked at the stats. So yeah, I don't know. I don't see myself getting into that. Yeah, Rancid Polecat, those Nurgle bug flyers, the bloat drones. Well, then there's also, I mean, technically for the demons. If you want to go Nurgle demons, you can get those big kind of sort of like they look like a giant fly with a dude riding on it. I guess technically you could use those too. I haven't looked in the book. I've got the index. I can see if that's if those guys are in there. They probably are. A little page turning music. If I had a master of music here. Nurgling plague drones. Plague drones? Are those the guys who fly? No. Beasts of Nurgle. I thought the plague drones were. Each model is Death Head and Plague Sword. They fly into battle on rot flies. Yeah, so it's plague drones. So plague drones you could take as well. And those are technically Chaos Demons of Nurgle, but still, you can mix it all together. That's the thing that's really interesting, I'm finding. And some of the alien races are not finding this to be as much fun, which I get. But like Imperium, when you're building your army, as long as that has the keyword Imperium, you could have in a single detachment stuff from Space Marines, Imperial Guard, Inquisition, basically anything from the 2 Imperium books. You can mix all those things together into a single detachment. You don't even have to have them in separate detachments. So that's kind of interesting. And with Chaos, you can mix all the Chaos Space Marine and the Chaos Demon stuff interchangeably back and forth. Now, with Orcs, everything's Orcs. So, and with, say, like Eldar, technically I guess you can mix probably Eldar and Dark Eldar, though I haven't looked at that book really because I'm not a big Eldar fan. So there's that, but yeah. Let's see here. What else have we got? Jeff Muncie asks, what are your plans for Gen Con? That's a good question. So I'm going to be going down on... So Gen Con runs Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's in mid-August. We go down Wednesday, like early-ish, and then we get there sometime in the afternoon on Wednesday. And then, get into our hotel room and all that stuff, kind of get our bearings. And so, yeah, we do all of that, and then basically... I've got some meetings planned. Excuse me. Of course, it's Sunday morning, so my voice is going to go out. So yeah, I've got meetings planned with some a couple different companies here and there. And then on Saturday night, actually, if any of you are going to be at Gen Con, on Saturday night, we're going to be doing a meetup. So block that out in your calendar if you could. We're basically just going to meet probably around 7 p.m. at a local sandwich shop that's maybe 3 or 4 blocks away from the convention center. So that'll be kind of fun. Hopefully we can get a bunch of people and just kind of hang out and stuff like that. And then see where things go from there, I guess. But yeah, that's currently my plans. I'm not playing in any games right now. I want to get some demos in, like I do anytime I go to a convention. I always want to get some demos in so that I can learn about new games and things like that. Obviously, I'll be going through the dealer hall a lot. I'll be taking probably pictures and some video and all kinds of jazz like that. But I'm not playing in any tournaments. I'm not playing anything planned. On Thursday, the convention, the dealer area, opens up at 10 a.m. But I'm going to be able to get in an hour early because I'm going to have a press badge. So I can't buy anything. But I can, do interviews and stuff, and there won't be so many people around and all that stuff. Give me just a second. I'm going to clear my throat. All right, there we go. So, yeah, that's the plan, I guess, is that I'm going to be doing some, just some meetings and looking at stuff and seeing the new things that come out and, the general kind of stuff. I don't have any other things. As far as plans as like tournaments or any kind of... There's not a lot of tournaments that really happen at Gen Con. It's very different. There are some tournaments, certainly, but not really in miniatures games. You see a lot of tournaments for board games, and you see a lot of tournaments for like all the big... like there's, I think, a big Magic tournament or several big Magic tournaments, like Netrunner, card games like that, those living card games and things like that. But yeah. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now with that. Hello from crappy Illinois. Well, it's raining here as well, so there's that. Let's see here. Gaming Trolls says, have you heard of Mythic Battles Pantheon? No, I haven't. Maybe I'll see them at Gen Con and see that stuff. Connor Minshall says, hi, what's your opinion on Black Templars in regards to Primaris squads? Can they have intercessors, or do you think that they should stick to Crusader squads with Primaris? I don't know. That's a good question. I haven't really thought about... I haven't really looked at the Black Templar portion of the new Imperium 1 book. I am planning, because I've got the starter box, I am planning on, and I've got some stuff already painted, I am planning on eventually making an Imperial force as well, not just Chaos force. And I'm going to be predominantly using the Primaris guys, just because, they're pretty cool. And I've got a bunch. So, yeah. But I don't know. We'll have to see how that's going to work out. Let me see here. What else have we got? Well, someone's saying that there's Black Templar Primaris images in the book, so they assume so. Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, hey, Gianna's there. Finally took the plunge and bought the starter set for $40K since Matt has been ignoring my requests for Wreck Age games. Well, he's very busy. He's going to be coming up here eventually, and we're going to be doing some battle reports with Wreck Age. Not probably until maybe September-ish, but we will be doing it. Speaking of battle reports, my plan right now is to probably at least film 1, if not 2 battle reports by the end of this very month. So this is July. A lot of people have asked for years about me doing battle reports, and I've never been super duper confident in my ability to do so. So we'll see how it works out, because what happened is that with the Patreons, one of the first milestone goals for funding Patreon was if I hit a certain level per month, then I was going to start doing battle reports, and that level got hit. So I have been, the other hobbying that I've been doing, besides painting my Hell Turkey and other pieces like that, is I've been building and painting terrain like a crazy person. So that's fun. Because I need, matching terrain and like a nice looking board for when the battle reports happen. So the first battle reports will happen end of this month. I've got a friend of mine lined up. He's working on a Blood Angels Primaris army, and we're going to do probably an 8th edition 40k. We're also going to do, not necessarily him and I, but somebody else and I are going to be doing Shadow War Armageddon. And then the plan is for moderator Matt, to come up, and he's in Chicago, so it's about 3 hours away. He's going to come up, and we're going to do some Wreck Age tutorials as well. I've got painted stuff. Obviously, he's got painted stuff. I need to work on a little bit more terrain that's a little bit less 41st, millennium or whatever, and a little bit more post-apocalyptic, post-collapse stuff. So I've got to get that finished. But yeah, that's where we're at right now. So there you go. Let me see here. Raphael says, hi, and thank you so much for helping me get back into the hobby after almost 20 years. One question, do you varnish minis, and if yes, what would you use to do it? I do varnish my minis afterwards, after I'm completely done. Well, not completely done. I varnish them after I'm completely done, but before I put any flock on the base. And I don't put flock or little static grass on my bases too frequently, but if I do that very, very last. So I varnish before that step, and then the very last step is to put you don't want to spray varnish usually over flock, because it makes it look all weird. So there's that. Anyway, the varnish that I use is something called Tester's Dull Coat. And I think it's harder to get over in Europe than it is here in America for some reason. Something about it being dangerous, or it, poisonous, or some sort of issue like that. But from what I understand, you can maybe get to it. But from what I understand, I mean, it's my favorite. It's the flattest, you know what I mean? Like the least shiny. I don't like shiny models too much, so that's why I use Tester's Dull Coat. They don't pay me to say that. They don't give me any free cans or nothing. But yeah, I think it's the best stuff. So definitely. What else have we got here? Maybe a little unrelated, but have you checked out Ninth Age? It's the community-driven Warhammer Fantasy Resurrection. I haven't checked it out. I've heard of it. I know what it is. It's people who, preferred or really liked 8th edition, which was, 8th edition Warhammer. So this is confusing. 8th edition Warhammer Fantasy. Currently, we're on 8th edition 40k. But Fantasy ended at 8th edition, and then they went to Age of Sigmar, and that was the new thing. And a lot of people some people didn't like Age of Sigmar initially, so they said, well, we're going to make 9th edition. But they don't call it 9th edition, they call it 9th Age, so that there's maybe not confusion or whatever. So if you've made it through all of that, but it's all community done, it's all free from what I understand. I've not played it or really looked at the rules at all, but because I like Age of Sigmar. So, but if you're interested, if you don't like Age of Sigmar but you preferred the old way of fantasy, most likely you've probably already heard of Ninth Age. So I don't know, like if you've never played Warhammer Fantasy anything before, I don't know that Ninth Age would be the great place to start, because it's going to have about as steep of a learning curve as 8th edition Warhammer Fantasy had, but maybe it'll work out for you. Or maybe some people who already play, and then they can teach you. Generally, any game is easier to get through and easier to learn when you actually have other people who know the rules to help you out and play with you. If you're just completely doing it in a vacuum, you're just starting out and you have the book and you're going to teach yourself how to play, at least I find that to be difficult. So, definitely, yeah. Hi from South Africa. What is your opinion on the best strategy for the Helldrake in 8th? Ooh, gosh. Well, Lord knows I'm not a strategist or a strategist. The Helldrake has 2 guns that you can choose, one or the other. And one is some sort of autocannon? Reaper autocannon, maybe? And the other one is the Bale Flamer. And I went with the Bale Flamer basically because it's a flamethrower, and in 8th edition, flamethrowers don't miss. You may not do as much damage as you would like. So it used to be, for those of you who are relatively new to 40k, and the 8th edition is maybe your first thing, you used to have these templates. I made a video on Facebook a while back about what you're going to do with your old 40k templates, because the templates are gone now. When you wanted to hit somebody with a flamethrower, you had to actually lay the template down on the table and see, oh, it covers this many people. And that was kind of a pain in the butt, frankly. Still flipping through the pages. So now flamethrowers, if you're in a range, they just auto-hit, but then you roll like a D3 or a D6 or whatever to find out how many, wounds you do. Okay, Helldrake here. So the Helldrake comes with a Hades autocannon and Helldrake claws, but you can swap out the Hades autocannon for the Bale Flamer. The Bale Flamer has an 18-inch range, and it does assault D6. So you roll D6, and let's say you get a 4. That means you can do 4 dice worth of... It's like you hit 4 times automatically, okay? And then you roll your strength versus the model's toughness to find out wounds. It's got a -2 AP, so it takes 2 off of their armor save. So if you're a Space Marine with a 3-up armor save, a 5-up armor save. And it does 2 damage per wound. So, yeah, I think the Bale Flamer is nice. Now, it's like, if I remember correctly, it's like an extra 60 points. So it makes the guy a little expensive. But that's my kind of thing. Otherwise, there's not a lot of other strategy involved. I mean, he doesn't move super fast. His max move is 30, but he doesn't have a minimum move. He has Infernal Regeneration, so at the beginning of each of your turns, you get a wound back, so that's sort of nice. And he's demonic, so he has a built-in 5-up invulnerable save. But really, he's a kind of a simple character, or whatever, which is fine. He doesn't have the... Like, he has claws, which are for melee, if you get into melee with something, I guess. But he doesn't have, like, vectored strike and all that crazy junk that he used to have back in the previous versions. So where you just fly over guys and do damage and stuff. So, yeah, I don't know. I think there's not a ton of strategy to him, but I just wanted to have, like, a nice, kind of a nice weapon, or a nice flyer. I mean, I had I had the model. It's been sitting in my basement for 4 years, unpainted, so I wanted to paint him up. I'm not saying I wish I hadn't. I wish I hadn't gone down the road that I'm going, where I'm painting all of the trim separately. There's a lot of trim on that guy. Definitely. So that's kind of an issue. But he'll be done eventually. Actually, I wanted to get some new paint, because I'm doing a lot of the trim in gold, and I'm using like normal Vallejo gold. But what I've been finding lately is if I use Vallejo airbrush gold metallics, or any kind of metallics, silver metallics, they make a much brighter, like they just work nicer. So I went through and I painted almost all the trim in gold, and then I put a sepia wash on it to kind of darken it up, make it look a little grungy. And now I'm going to go back and just sort of touch up little parts to make it look like it's worn gold, but there's parts of it that are shiny than others. So once that other the other bottle of gold comes, which should be coming, I think, on Wednesday this week, the only place I could find it was on Amazon. Like, there's no place around here that sells the metallic... Well, there's no place around here that sells the Vallejo airbrush paints. There's plenty of places that sell Vallejo paints, but not the airline. So, anyway, that'll be showing up hopefully on Wednesday, so that I'll be able to do some more touch-up on him. And he's getting close. He's close to being done. I still have to paint his little tongue. He has a little tongue. Anyway, let's see here. What else have we got? Benoit asks, have you painted the Poxwalkers yet? What is your strategy with that much skin? Do you follow Warhammer TV to apply many coats on a white base, or do you have another technique? I have not painted the Poxwalkers yet. And honestly, I haven't painted any of the new Death Guard yet, because, I painted the Bloat Drone. Well, I didn't paint the Bloat Drone. I primed the Bloat Drone. He's built, he's got his base textured, and he's been primed with one of the he's been primed with the dark green Krylon camouflage paint, which I like to use as a primer because now he's already dark green and he's primed, so that's nice. But I haven't built any of the rest of the guys yet in there. So the Poxwalkers, I don't know, like the Poxwalkers, I'm not sure if they're going to fit into my army right away. Down the road they might, because I'm also going to be using Typhus as my HQ. So this is really interesting. I'm going to get back to the Poxwalkers in just a second, but this is very interesting. Actually, I'm going to go back to the Codex. Or Index, sorry. So I'm looking at, what's his name there? Typhus, and the Lord of Contagion. So Lord of Contagion is the HQ unit, the main HQ unit. It comes in the starter box for Warhammer 40k. And Typhus is, well, Typhus. So he's the Nurgle Space Marine HQ that's been around for quite some time. I've got a model of him, which I'm going to be painting soon. He's been built but unpainted. That was the case with a lot of my older Chaos stuff, sadly. And he's fine cast. But again, he's Nurgle, so it's okay. You know what I mean? Nurgle fine cast is fine because there's going to be pits and weird mistakes in the resin, but, you know, Nurgle. So anyway, you'll notice here, if I can get the book in, Typhus and the Lord of Contagion are on the same page, which is maybe not the smartest thing for our friends at Games Workshop because it allows you to compare them right next to each other, side by side. Typhus and the Lord of Contagion are nearly identical. They have the exact same stat line. Typhus, his melee weapon is called Man Reaper, and it is almost identical to the Plague Reaper, which is that big weird axe that the Lord of Contagion has in the main book. Except that Man Reaper gives you +3 strength, whereas Plague Reaper only gives you +2. Otherwise, they're identical. You can re-roll wound rolls of 1 for this weapon. That's the same on both of them. They both have a -3 AP, and they both do 3 damage per wound. But one is strength +3, one's strength +2. Okay, so Typhus is winning right now. They have the same stats, but he's got a better melee weapon. He also has basically what looks like a plasma pistol, but it's called the Destroyer Hive. It only has a 6-inch range, but it's pistol 2d6. Strength 4, AP -3 again, damage 1. This weapon hits on a rolls of 5+, even when firing Overwatch, regardless of any modifiers. Now, I don't understand that. I don't understand if that means it only hits on 5+, or if that's the max. I'm not 100% sure about that yet. Lord of Contagion has no range weapon, no pistol of any kind. And then Typhus has blight grenades. Lord of Contagion does not have blight grenades. They both have Death to the False Emperor. They both have Disgustingly Resilient. They both have Nurgle's Gift. They both have Cataphractii armor. And they both have Teleport Strike. However, Typhus also has Host of the Destroyer Hive. And this is what's so weird to me. Typhus has a thing in it for Poxwalkers. Lord of Contagion is in the box with Poxwalkers, but he does not have a special rule for Poxwalkers. Typhus does. Typhus has Host of the Destroyer Hive. Friendly units of Poxwalkers increase their strength and toughness by 1 whilst they are within 7 inches of Typhus, because 7 is the number of Nurgle. Now, the most interesting thing about these two models, in my mind, is that Typhus costs fewer points. Yeah, which is weird. So Typhus, if I can find him here. Typhus. Typhus is 164 points with all of his war gear. The Lord of Contagion is 139 points with no war gear. And Man Reaper, if I can find it here, where is, no, is it Man Reaper? No, Plague Reaper, sorry. Plague Reaper is 45 points. So 139 plus 45, that's like 180 some-ish. I'm not great at math. 184, I want to say. So 184 points versus 164 points. So for 20 less points, you get a guy who's better, Typhus, than you do Lord of Contagion. I had to check the number several times. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense, but that seems to be the case. So anyway, getting back to Poxwalkers, as I said, I may go with Poxwalkers down the road because I do like to use Typhus. As far as painting the Poxwalkers, what I would do would be I would probably, again, spray them green. Like, start with a green primer. Maybe that special Death Guard green, although I might want to go with something a little bit lighter. And then I would highlight up and then probably make the tentacles a lot more Caucasian-ish color, more pinkish, reddish, you know, kind of a... So you've got a nice contrast between the green fading into the red. That might be hard to pull off, too. I'm not great at wet blending, so there's that. But, yeah, I don't know. I'd probably look into that. But like I said, I don't have any plans right now to run them for a while, at least, because I kind of like, you know, I like Marines. The Plague Marines are awesome. And then the other big portion of my army, which I'll explain in a bit, is probably going to be Khorne Berserkers, because they got super good, too, in 8th edition. So, yeah, super happy about that. Because I've always loved Khorne Berserkers, too. Even though I'm generally like a usually a Nurgle guy. I also do like the Khorne fellows, so that's a lot of fun. Let's see here. Does anyone know if the GW store will ever have Necron Flayed ones again? I want some. Can't buy them. Not even on eBay. Flayed ones. Oh, the guys with the long knives and the fingers and all that jazz. Yeah, I don't know if they're getting rid of those or if they are. Were they still metal? I think they were still metal. I wonder if they're going to be, or maybe if they weren't metal, then they were fine cast, so that's problematic. Yeah, I don't know if they're going to be doing that again. I've been noticing some things on and off on the GW website that are hard to find. You know what I mean? They're just not they're out of print or whatever. You don't know if they're going to be bringing them back, if they're designing something new. I'm not sure. I mean, we saw this week with the pre-order starting up for those new. There's only like 2 new Primaris. There's like a Primaris captain and I think a Primaris librarian. And I looked at the 2 of them and I was like, meh. I mean, I already have a regular librarian that I'm probably going to eventually put into my Imperial army when I get to that point. And I really like the Captain and Gravis armor that came in the starter box, so I'm probably going to just stick with him. Yeah, that's basically the case. So, Kelly says, Adam, I left my Iowata in Windex a few days in the ultrasonic cleaner and it ate the chrome off of some of the joints and inside the cup, corroded. Any experience with that? Ammonia the issue? If I had to guess, I'd say maybe. I usually keep my Iowata brush not in Windex, because I don't usually use Windex to clean it or anything. I use just like, I actually use Iowata airbrush cleaner. I bought a big honkin' bottle of it years ago from... it's an art supply website. I think it was Dick Blick, I think is the art supply website that I got it from. So I mix that in with just regular distilled water. So it's maybe like, I don't know, 20 parts water to 1 part airbrush cleaner. And I usually just let my airbrush soak in there, and it can stay in there for weeks and weeks, and it's not a problem. But yeah, with the Windex, like straight Windex, I could see it maybe taking off the chrome. I could see that being a problem. So yeah, I don't know. I know a lot of people like to use it to clean it, Windex. I've not soaked it in it, though, so I don't know. That's a good question. Douglas Hooker says, I am painting Poxwalkers now. Mixed the WTV, Warhammer TV technique with some embellishments of my own, shared on the Minions Showcase page. Oh, cool. We'll have to take a look at that. Korvac says, I ordered the Librarian. My Primaris force really just needs a way to deny the witch. Yeah, and like I said, I've got a non-Primaris... I've got the one that they came out in 7th edition, I want to say. 6th or 7th edition, the plastic, all, like... One of those where it's just like one single sprue, and it's good, like, you buy those and you put them together, a little clamshell. But it's the... it might be... Is it Tigurius? I don't think it's Tigurius. I think it's just a regular one, but he's got like the staff with the ram's horn on the end and all that jazz. He's not painted, but he's built. So yeah, I'm going to be using him as my librarian. So I think it's going to be kind of interesting to... Just in my own mind, the storyline that's going to be going on in my head, in my, at least, Imperial Force, and probably in a lot of people's Imperial Forces, is that they're going to be mixing like normal Space Marines with these new Primaris Marines, and you're going to be thinking about, at least I'm thinking to myself about normal Space Marines seeing these guys who are way bigger and like new, you know what I mean? They're like new guys, and they're like, there's probably going to be some conflict. But like, well, who are these big jerks who showed up now and are in our chapter, and just that kind of stuff. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. It'll be interesting to see if they write stories like that in some of the new Black Library books. They start talking about the Primaris and like some pushback from some of the chapters saying, "Hey, I don't know why we need to have these big doofuses hanging out with us. We've been doing fine for 10,000 years or whatever." But yeah, it'll be kind of interesting to see that. That'll be the story going on, at least in my head, while I'm playing. But I'm only going to have probably, like, in my starter force, because I've been kind of just math hammering, little list hammering, as it were, trying to figure out with the stuff that comes in the starter box, and then some of the stuff that I've already got, like, what could I build? It's funny because I have 2 rhinos painted for my old initial Imperium force. Like, as I started this whole concept back, like, I was going to do Black Templar, and then I decided not to do Black Templar, but I had a bunch of Black Templar built with the iconography, the Maltese cross stuff and all that jazz. So instead, I came up with my own army called the Steel Cross, and I came up with my own color stuff, but I still use the Maltese cross stuff, so it was going to work. but I never got super far in painting it. I did like a couple of rhinos and like a squad of 10 guys. A lot of other stuff was built, but those were the only things that were painted. The thing that's funny now is that I really like my rhinos. They turned out nicely. None of my Primaris of any kind can get into a rhino, so I'd have to figure something else out. I don't know. We're going to have to... It's interesting that basically Primaris can't get in... They can't even get into Land Raiders. You can put guys in Terminator armor into a Land Raider. You know, they can't get into a Storm Talon. Storm Talons can carry a Dreadnought, but Primaris can't get into a Storm Talon. I think it's because they really want to sell that hover tank when it comes out, the Repulsor, and I bet you that thing will carry Primaris. I could be wrong, but it'll probably... And there's a listing in the Imperium book for a Rhino Primaris that doesn't carry Primaris. It's just like a Rhino with like some plasma guns on it. So, I don't know. It's kind of weird. I think it's interesting. Count Zacula says, I like that name, Count Zacula, looking to get into the hobby, and I really like Nurgle. Well, as you should. It seems like they can be tricky to do, though, with all the detail. Do you think it would be better to start with an army that's easier to paint? Honestly, I think Nurgle is not hard to paint at all. Because if you make some mistakes, they're Nurgle, and it's okay. Like, if they look a little grungy, or if you didn't clean up the wash, you know, or highlight properly, it's okay. Like, if you've got... Like, if you were going to be doing Eldar... In my mind, making Eldar look right is very difficult because everything has to be very clean and pristine because they're fancy Eldar. You know what I mean? Like, you wouldn't see a dirty elf, you know, like in like a Tolkien type thing or whatever. They'd be walking on top of the snow and all that kind of stuff. You wouldn't have that. So, in my mind, it's kind of the same way with Eldar. Eldar should always be very clean painting. I would love to see a well-done Eldar who's like in the midst of battle and covered in blood and mud and stuff like that, but I've never seen one like that. Sam, Painter Sam, he's painted a bunch of Eldar for our friend Kevin over the years, and it's always really super clean, amazing looking stuff. So I think Eldar would be one of the hardest ones to start with. And I think even Space Marines would be kind of tough because Space Marines need to be sort of clean and stuff like that. With Nurgle, you know, again, just like it doesn't matter if Nurgle are made out of fine cast because you're not going to notice the imperfections, you're not going to notice super imperfections in paint either, in my opinion. So, anyone know if they put out pre-populated army sheets for the Primaris and Nurgle armies out of the 8th ed boxes? I don't think there are pre-populated. I mean, like, they have the stats and everything for the Nurgle and the Primaris stuff that's in the boxes. They have, so you don't need, like, if you were just going to be playing with the stuff in the box and you weren't planning on expanding at all, you wouldn't technically need to get an index, but they don't have, like, an actual filled out army list. You know what I mean? Like saying, well, there's 5 of these guys and they cost this many points and there's this and that. You know, they give you all the stats and they give you all the information you need, but they don't actually have a filled out list. On the Warhammer community site right now, like a couple days ago, they finally released PDFs. So, like, when you're in... I'm probably not going to be able to find it here real quick, but when you're in the book, okay, towards the back, there's, like, roster sheet listings. So, like, you could... I'm not going to be able to find them. Anyway, they're the sheets that tell you this is how you fill out your roster and, you know, like, all that stuff. Well, it's really hard to photocopy stuff out of a hardcover, isn't it? I can't find it. Anyway... It's basically just a roster sheet that you can use to fill out your army list. Well, they finally released those as PDFs that you can download, so now you can print them out, and it's way easier, and you don't have to try to photocopy stuff over your hardcover. So you could take a look on the Warhammer community site and see if maybe that kind of thing is what you're looking for. Torch says, Necrons, easy to paint, hard to build. Yeah, to some degree. I have built 10 warriors and painted them, and you're right, they were way easier to paint than they were to build. The building was a little tough, but not terrible. Yeah, but like getting those arms onto with the guns for the normal warriors, that there's got to be an easier way to do that, but it's hard. But yeah, painting, I mean, with my Eldar, I went just completely as easy as possible. I just painted, like spray painted them silver. I think I actually did use a silver airbrush paint, like a metallic Vallejo. And then I sprayed that and then did some washes and some highlights and pretty much called her a day. Let's see here. What else have we got? But yeah, easiest army probably to paint, very possibly, is Necrons, but they are a little bit harder to build, in my opinion. Whereas like the guys in the starter box, both either Primaris Marines or the Death Guard, are very easy to build. They're designed that way. They kind of just press together. They're not as customizable because of that, but they have very nice dynamic poses and they look pretty cool. So yeah, definitely. Let's see here. Paul asks, anyone here hyped for the Christmas terrain sets from GW? Yeah, I haven't seen much talk about that. I can't think of the last time I saw a really cool Christmas terrain set from them either. I don't remember if there were there Christmas terrain sets last year? I don't remember that. Hey Adam, any tips and ideas for a cyberpunk themed terrain? Cyberpunk themed terrain. Well, what I would probably do is I would look at the guys who do stuff for Infinity, because Infinity is very cyberpunk. It's just generally more clean if you look at it. So when I think of cyberpunk, I think of, well, the actual RPG Cyberpunk. I think of Shadowrun. I think of stuff like that. So if you were to get some of those cool MDF kits, like somewhere in the basement I have an MDF apartment kit that's designed kind of for sci-fi stuff, generally for Infinity. If I was to put that together and then paint it up to be real dirty and grungy with lots of graffiti on the sides, I think that would probably be your best bet. Yeah, I honestly think those are the best things probably for that kind of stuff. If you're looking for cyberpunk type stuff, look at Shadowrun, the RPG for like just reference, visual reference, and look at other stuff like that, definitely. So yeah. Okay. Just gonna fix some stuff real quick, and there we go. Okay. What else have we got here? Let's see here. Wargamer Online. Hello. Haha. Tuning in for some Sunday Adam. Well, glad to see you guys. VJ Morph has got a question. Adam, so 8th edition rules. How do you find the whole charging, pile-in, phantom inch, consolidate thing? Well, because I played Age of Sigmar, it was pretty normal to me. Honestly, it was interesting after watching, them start talking about 8th edition before it even came out, and them explaining stuff, because they explained so many different phases and so many different things on the Warhammer community website. It was really interesting to go through and go, well, that came from Age of Sigmar, and well, like, because the morale thing, the entire morale phase is basically just the battle shock phase from Age of Sigmar. The psychic phase is the magic portion of the hero phase from Age of Sigmar, and that makes it a lot easier and better. So yeah, that worked out pretty well. But I don't know. I don't mind the way that it works. The phantom inch thing, I don't see that being a problem. As long as you're within an inch, then you can get into melee. I think that they're doing that so people don't fight over, well, you're like a millimeter off. You didn't quite get close enough to touch. It's more of a situation of like, yeah, you got pretty close. And honestly, I don't know how they're going to do it for different tournaments and things like that where it's really super important. But I think that, for us around here, for the people that I've been playing with and things like that, you're just like, yeah, you're within an inch. Because there's little gauges. I bought one of those goofy little gauges that they sold at the beginning of the launch, that looks, on one side it looks like an Imperial Eagle, and on the other side it kind of looks, it's all Nurgly and weird. And it's got like a 3-inch, 2-inch, 1-inch, half-inch kind of little gauge. They sold a metal bronzy one for Age of Sigmar that was $33. This one was $10 because it's made out of like rubber. So yeah, I bought one of those. I did not buy the fancy metal one for Age of Sigmar. I got a cool 3D printed one actually from someone at a convention, which is really cool. Anyway, long story short is I don't mind that. I like that. I liked everything so far that I've come across with Age of Sigmar. Yeah, it's been working out pretty well. VJ follows up and says, I find it really confusing how you have to stay an inch away when you charge. It It's different too because in Age of Sigmar you have to stay 3 inches away. So here's what's interesting. So in Age of Sigmar they did it so that when you move up to somebody, you have to stay. You cannot get any closer than 3 inches away. And the reason for that is so that when it comes time to charge, technically Snake Eyes is a failed charge because you can only go 2 inches and you're 3 inches away. So you could, even though you got as close as you could, you still couldn't quite make the charge, which kind of makes sense, I guess, from being more of a fantasy type game because there's a lot more charging. There's very little shooting that goes on really in Age of Sigmar. There's some armies that can do it, but it's not nearly as much as there are in 40K. In 40K, they get you up to 1 inch, and then you basically can't fail a charge because you can't roll a 1 on 2d6. So there's that. But yeah, I don't know. It's worked out pretty well. I've been liking it for the most part. So what else have we got here? Joshua says, just throwing this out there, but I really wish Black Library released the music that they used for their audiobooks and audio dramas. Quality stuff right there. They might not have the licensing to be able to release it standalone. They might have only gotten the licensing to be able to use it as part of the audiobooks or the audio dramas. So maybe that's the reason they can't do it. Like maybe they didn't like pay to have it commissioned. Maybe they just licensed it. So I could see that being a reason. But I mean, honestly, if they had the ability to do it and they think that they could get some money from it, they would probably go ahead and do it. But like I said, if I had to guess, I bet it's probably licensed. It's probably not composed and designed for them. So let's see here. Jay Thomas says, no, Adam, no. That thing is terrible. I'm assuming you're talking about my really super cool combat gauge that I bought. I always, like every time they launch, well, not every time. I don't think I bought anything for 7th edition, but in 6th edition, they always make these kind of goofy gadgets at the launch of every new edition of 40K. 6th edition, when it came out, they made a tape measure that looked like a servo skull, and like, you know, you could pull out the tape, and then if you wanted to release it, you had to kind of push on the eye. It had like a red like eye lens thingy or whatever, and everything. And I had to buy one of those. It was stupid looking, kind of, but it was just fun. It actually is kind of lousy as a tape measure. Like when you pull out the tape measure, it has a tendency to slide back on its own sometimes, even though you don't want it to, slowly, and sometimes randomly. But yeah, I always buy some little gadget that they put out. I did not buy any of the wound dice, like the special 10-siders. I didn't buy any of those. I did buy the cards, because the cards are actually kind of useful. Like those cards that they have where you keep your, for your objective cards or whatever, where they tell you what your objective are. Those are kind of nice, because it's in the book. You could just roll and say, oh, I have to do this. But you have to keep track of it and remember what it is. But if you just have the cards, and the cards were cheap, so I did buy those. Matthias says, do you paint every day? Man, I wish I did. I try to paint as much as I can, but it isn't. There's definitely days that I miss. I certainly paint. Well, paint is maybe a strong word. I hobby at least every week, even in like the worst situations. Unless like I'm at a convention. Like if I was like when I go to the week that I go to Gen Con in mid-August, because I'll be gone Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I doubt that I'll be able to do any hobbying on the couple days before that, so I'll probably be like packing and stuff like that. But in general, like, because sometimes I'm just in build mode and not in paint mode, but I'm always doing some sort of hobby. Sadly, I can't do it every day though. But I try to do it as much as I can. Any thoughts about Warhammer Shadespire? I thought about using it as an escalation system for Age of Sigmar skirmish, then to full Age of Sigmar game. I played Shadespire not at Adepticon because they showed off Shadespire at Adepticon on the Wednesday before the main convention started, and I didn't get there till Thursday morning. But I went to this distributor conference back in late May in Madison, Wisconsin, at the ACD. They're a distributor. Distributors are the guys who buy stuff from the manufacturers and sell it to the game stores. They're like the kind of go-between, so that each game store doesn't have to buy stuff separately from every manufacturer. They just buy from their distributors. And anyway, so it was this distributor conference that I went to with a friend of mine who's a store owner. And on Thursday night after dinner, there was tons of demos from all different types of companies, board games and this and that and everything. And Games Workshop was there this year, as usual. But they were running all kinds of cool stuff. And one of the things they were running was Shadespire. So I played... I was taught Shadespire by a guy from Games Workshop named Cole, who's, I think, from the American Games Workshop. I think they're in Memphis, Tennessee. I don't know, wherever they are. I think it's Memphis. So anyway, Cole taught me and another guy how to play Shadespire, and I think I need to play it a little bit more. I'm like, the models look great; they're really cool. The board materials and all that stuff looks great. I don't know. I think I need to play it a little bit more. Like I just maybe it was like one of those things at first glance. It just seemed like I couldn't see the strategy to it. Admittedly, I'm no strategist, or a strategist. But yeah, I don't know. I need to try it a little bit more, and it's going to be coming out in the fall, I believe. So we'll see how that goes. But it's interesting. They're aiming towards. It seems as if Shadespire is aiming towards kind of almost the X-Wing crowd, because you don't have to paint them specifically. Like, it looks nicer if you do, but they come in colored plastic. They're not pre-painted, but they do at least come in colored plastic. The Khorne guys are in red, and the Stormcast are in blue, and I guess they're also going to release a Death faction as well. And those they've showed off the Death models, and they're like really super cool looking, and I like Death anyway, so it's cool. So anyway, but those would be like I think a bone-colored plastic would make sense. So yeah, all that stuff. I'm thinking about it, but I want to play it again and just try to get a better hang on it. So I'm hoping to see it at Gen Con. That's one of the things I do want to demo at Gen Con, because I want to get the hang of it a little bit more. But right off the bat, I was kind of like, it did not immediately grab me. But I talked to plenty of people who played it at Adepticon who were like, wow, they really, really liked it right off the bat. So I just think I was maybe in a weird mood, or I wasn't catching it, or something like that. Admittedly, we were in a big room full of people all playing different demos of different games, and it was loud in there. If you saw any of the footage that I did from ACD Game Day, I walked into that big honking room where all the demos were going on, and it was a little crazy. So yeah, if you go back to end of May, I did like a quick live stream from my phone from ACD Game Day, and I walked into that room so you could see how big, and it was noisy. So Jay Thomas says, I want them Shadespire skeletons. Yeah, those are really nice sculpts, and it makes me hope that they're going to make new sculpts for Death for Age of Sigmar. That would be really nice, because my skeletons, though I love them, they're OLD old, and so I would like to get some new sculpts. Yeah. Redano says, thank you for making me want to play, paint more and more. Well, that's what I'm here for. I'm glad to hear it's working out. I don't know. Lately, I've just been like, I did a video about this years and years ago. There are times when I just don't sometimes have the motivation. It has not been lately. Lately, my motivation has been high. I've been doing a lot of building, a lot of painting. Now, admittedly, some of it is out of necessity. Like, I need to get the battle reports rolling, so I've been working on lots of terrain, which is kind of boring to paint, frankly, but it's not too bad. I listen to some, again, and I push this all the time. I listen to audiobooks, I listen to podcasts, I listen to stuff like that while I'm doing my modeling and all that jazz, and it works great. Sometimes I listen to YouTube videos like this. Many of you are probably hobbying right now, so that's awesome. It just works out well, I find. Audiobooks especially, because then sometimes there's times where I'm like, I don't necessarily have the great motivation to go down and hobby right now, but I want to know what happens in the next chapter of the book. So and I'm not just going to, listen to my headphones sitting in the living room, so I might as well be doing two things at once. It's best to be, multitasking. So yeah, that's where that's at right now. Max asks, do you have any thoughts on Army Painter paints? I don't own any of the normal paints from them. I bought a set of the washes, which I like quite a bit, and I have a couple cans of the tone, the strong tone and the hard tone stuff. And I like that stuff. I don't dip it. I brush it on sometimes when I'm going down that direction. Their brushes are really nice. I'm actually going to be probably doing a little bit more with Army Painter soon, because I talked with them. This was their first year at that convention that I was just talking about, or that conference in Madison, that distributor conference. So I ended up talking to the owner of the company and their social media guy, and we're going to be getting together and doing some stuff, because especially their primers, their colored primers, I want to be able to show people how quick and easy it is to actually be able to get started if you want to just like get some stuff to tabletop. A lot of people ask me like, well, I just, again, motivation. Sometimes it's just because it's so daunting, and their stuff in my mind can really be good for getting things done quickly. I posted, actually, if you go back and look through my Instagram, which would also be on Facebook, if you go back to late May, you'll see a bunch of pictures from their booth of... The heck game was... Oh, it was Rune Wars, that game from Fantasy Flight, with the skeletons and the humans. Yeah, they had a bunch of the stuff in there that was all painted with the Army Painter stuff, and I was really impressed, honestly, by the way it worked out. So, yeah, definitely. The Noob Painter says, listening while I clean up the airbrushing job in my Primaris. See, there you go. That's, I mean, honestly, one of the big reasons for doing these shows is, A, for the interaction back and forth, seeing the chat and being able to answer questions live and that kind of stuff. But then, even if you can't make it for the actual show, it kind of becomes every 2 weeks sort of like a admittedly maybe a little bit boring because it's just me, but it becomes kind of a podcast because you don't really have to look. It's just usually this going on, which is not super interesting. I do have a second camera. Speaking of which, let me show you why I actually bothered to set up the second camera. So another video that's going to be coming soon, end of summer probably, or maybe a little bit sooner, and or fall maybe. I'm getting interested in 3D printing. And so I purchased a 3D printer, and there'll be more about that later. But anyway, so one of the first things I've printed on my 3D printer, there's a website called Thingiverse where you can go and just download. People put up 3D shapes, the digital files, put them up there for free, and then you can download them and use them, maybe modify them, whatever. So you don't have to design something from scratch if you don't want to. There's obviously plenty of ways you can do that as well, design stuff from scratch, and I do have plans to do that. But just to test out the printer, I just was like, I should print something. So I started digging around on Thingiverse, and look what I found. So I found this cool symbol, and printed it out. This was the first thing that I printed from my my 3D printer, and it took about 2.5 hours, roughly, maybe 2:15. And then I sanded it on the edges and stuff like that a little bit, and did some work there. And then I put 2 layers of filler primer, which is like a thicker primer. You would not use filler primer on a normal model because it might fill in a little bit of the detail. But on a 3D print, you kind of want it to fill in. Like, you can still see the lines a little bit in the surface, and that's only because I kind of used a glossy varnish on it. But if you catch it in the light, you can see some of the lines there, but you don't see a ton of lines on the edges. It's not too bad. But I also sanded along these edges a little bit and stuff like that. And then I just painted it up. So the color, the normal color is, if you look at like that unpainted, that's the normal color. I'm using white filament. And yeah, so this is all painted just with normal acrylics. After I did 2 layers of the filler primer, which is gray, then I went over it with a dark color, maybe black? I don't remember exactly. And then I just painted the inside parts. Yeah, I think it was black. I painted it black, and then I did just normal metallic silvers over the symbol part, actually. And then I did a wash over that, probably just a sepia wash. And then, sprayed, not Tester's Dull Coat. This is just actually like Valspar, something that I got at Home Depot or whatever. And so it's not real. They say this is their flat, which is obviously not very flat. It's still pretty shiny, but it's not too bad. And then I went to Joann Fabrics, I think, and bought these pin backs and got a hot glue gun because somehow I didn't have a hot glue gun. And they cost like $3, so it's not that big of a deal. And then I did a really messy job of putting the hot glue on there, but I don't want it to fall off. And then I have this cool pin, which I'll be able to put on my coat. That you've probably seen that camo coat that I take with me sometimes to like conventions, like Adepticon and things like that. I don't know if I'll take the camo coat with me to Gen Con because it is going to be it'll be mid-August, so it'll probably be pretty hot. So I don't really feel like wearing a coat, but. So I'll probably still bring this along and stick it on my shirt or something like that. But yeah, so this was a really simple, just quick download. I'm going to make another one of these. I'm actually going to design my own symbol, and I'm probably going to try to make it Nurgle, because, Nurgle. But yeah, so this was just a real quick, easy thing. Like I said, 3D printed. And so there'll be more videos about 3D printing and stuff like that coming up soon. I want to talk about basically I want to talk about if you want to get your own 3D printer and what you would need to do for that kind of stuff and what you could do with it. And then I also want to talk about other options for 3D printing where you don't have to buy a 3D printer. There are companies out there that will do the 3D printing for you. You can send them a file, and then they will 3D print it and send it back to you. Or, alternatively, there are other things up on their website. There's a company called Shapeways, and they were at Adepticon. I talked to them a little bit at Adepticon. And if you go on to Shapeways, they have tons and tons and tons of 40K related stuff. So, or any kind of different wargaming. They have terrain, like fantasy terrain. They have all kinds of different little parts. But they do have things like, if you want special shoulder pads that like for made up stuff that Games Workshop doesn't make, or if you want, there's all kinds of different things that you can do, and they have available there. They have tons of terrain and extra little pieces and stuff like that, and then you can buy it. They print it and mail it to you. So you could design something, which I've done in the past. I actually, before I had the 3D printer, I made some little. I don't have a picture of them here, but they're like little. When you're building terrain from scratch, if you want it to look more real, you need to, when you look at a building, there's like electrical boxes outside the building and the place where the cable or the phone goes in and all those little extra embellishments. So I built in a 3D program some little embellishments and I had them print them. And they turned out pretty cool. So there's all kinds of things like that at Shapeways, but that stuff's all coming down the road. Anyway. What else have we got? Tyler asks, how does your wife support your hobby, or does she participate in any of it with you? She's got her own hobbies. She likes to knit, and she's a musician. But she also likes board games. And so sometimes we play board games together, although I'm not a big board game fan myself. But otherwise, she's very supportive of all my weird stuff. I mean, I'm doing this every 2 weeks and taking over most of the basement and all that kind of stuff, and it's been great. So, but yeah, eventually maybe I might be able to, once I have like, I don't know, maybe we might, once I get everything set up downstairs a little bit more so that I can actually play on the main table downstairs, maybe we'll play some Age of Sigmar once I've got 2 full, like, say, 1,000-point armies. I've got my 1,000-point army of Chaos right now. As soon as I get a 1,000-point army of Death, then we could easily play some games, and so I'll teach her like Age of Sigmar and stuff like that if she's interested. So definitely, yeah. VJ Morph says, looking forward to 3D printing videos, Adam. Mine is on the way. Yeah. I'm not going to do a ton of them, probably. I'm going to do just some informational stuff to, just kind of like I did with the Airbrush, videos, where I think there's been 4 of those. And I may make some more of the Airbrush videos as well. But it's, again, more trying to get people to understand the beginning stuff to it, the intro stuff, and then be able to go from there. And then if they're interested, then they're kind of probably do a lot. Like if I can kind of get you guys rolling into a particular, like, let's say, tell you really airbrushing is not scary. You can do it. It's a thing you can do. Here's some very simple, here's some questions that I can answer, and then if you get into it and you start doing airbrushing, well, then you can learn more on your own and find out all kinds, because the internet's got lots of things going on. You don't have to learn everything from me, but if I can help and push you in the right direction, I'd rather do that than have you order an airbrush that's the wrong kind, like the whole concept behind gravity fed versus siphon fed. That's important for us as miniature painters. We want to have gravity fed, because siphon fed, you have to turn the air pressure way up, and that's a whole thing. So explaining that kind of stuff is good, definitely. Devin Jones says, I use Blender. Damn pain to learn, too. Yeah, I've been thinking about trying to learn Blender, but Blender's a 3D program for making... It's not really designed... There are add-ons for it that make it easier for designing 3D stuff for 3D printing. Here's a scale model of how big this is next to my head. Anyway, but... So for the the stuff that I've always designed in the past has always been in SketchUp, which is easier. Like SketchUp, you could not make a really pretty picture or a great animation. Blender, you can make a great animation, but I'm not trying to make an animation. I'm trying to make a simple 3D object that I'm going to print on my printer. So yeah, that's why I've been using SketchUp, but I would like to find something a little bit better. I know there's also Tinkercad, which is actually just runs in a browser for free. There's a lot of different ones. I should learn Blender, though, because I could also use it at work. But for like augmented reality and virtual reality stuff, which we're actually starting to get into a little bit more, which is fun. Let's see here. What else have we got? Water compressors are too expensive. Get one with a tank and save money. My first airbrush compressor I got from the hardware store, and it was red, and it was the kind you keep in your garage for blowing up stuff. And it worked fine. You generally have to get some adapters so that it will actually plug into the hose that you would use for your airbrush, but that's not very expensive. The one downside to that type of compressor is that they are crazy loud. So they have a tank, which means that they're basically silent while you are spraying until you empty the tank almost, and then the compressor has to kick back in to fill up the tank, and then it scares the pants off you because it kicks in and it's really super loud. So that was the one downside for me with that type of compressor, but yeah, I think I maybe paid $50 or $60. And it worked pretty great for quite a while, but then actually the compressor unit, the actual motory part, started making a lot of weird noises, like way worse than the original noises, and it did not work as well anymore. So that's when I bought a regular airbrush compressor. The benefit to an airbrush compressor is they're really quiet in comparison, but they don't often have a tank. More often than not, they don't. So yeah, that's kind of the difference between those two. Uncle Adam, what is your best advice on painting powered armor in a Hawaiian shirt type pattern? My best advice would be to not. But not because it would be ugly or anything like that. I think it'd be hysterical. It sounds really hard. That's all freehand, basically. You know what I mean? Like trying to actually paint like a Hawaiian shirt type pattern on power armor, that's all freehand. And I stink at freehand, so I've got sadly no good, reason or way to tell you how to do that, because that makes me shiver. I can't even think of, you'd be painting like little flowers or whatever maybe and stuff like that. And yeah, that would be hard. You'd have to get really, I guess my only suggestion would be to get really good at freehand and then try to go from there. That's got to be your best bet. Mitsutaru Abe says you should do a 3D printed Tabletop Minions logo. I've been thinking about that. Actually, I was, because the logo, I've got the logo in, a little bit of a nerd alert here right now. I have the logo done already in vector graphics. If you're a graphics nerd like myself, that's a different type of graphics than normal bitmap graphics. Anyway, so I've got it in vector. It'll be relatively easy to make in 3D. I just need to find the time to do it. And there's something wrong. Wrong side. Where is it? No, over here. The M, the big M in the TM. In the past, when I've tried to extrude it in 3D, something is funny with that M in my original file, so I have to fix that. It's technical graphics nerd problems. Anyway, so yeah, but I am thinking about making a Tabletop Minions, maybe like a pin, or I don't know, something like that. That'd be kind of fun. Can a Psyker use Smite twice in one phase? I don't believe so, unless it has a special... most powers you can't use twice, but maybe you can with Smite. Well, I don't think a single Psyker can use Smite. I think that if you had two Psykers, each of them could use Smite, but that's the only one. I'd have to go back and look. But it's in the main book. If you just download the core rules, which is that free document that's like 12 pages or 16 pages or whatever it is, it's in the core rules, the free, simple rules for 40K. I think it explains in there that you can or can't, and I can't remember which one it is off the top of my head, so sorry. Let's see here. Nemir the Blind says, easy to say, most people in my local store are that people. Power. Sorry, power players. Yeah. Power players are hard to... Yeah, I find... because I run across them from time to time, too, at the local shop, people who are really only interested in winning, and I generally have a tendency to play them once. And then they maybe later on, they're like, hey, you want to get together and play again? And I'm kind of like, I don't, as it turns out. And maybe if enough people stop playing against them, then they'll maybe stop doing that, but most likely not, because they'll find it just a small niche of other power players and be able to play against them, and it's a whole thing. Scott Davis says, Adam, I'm a mechanical engineering student and we 3D print stuff all the time. You might want to check out Fusion 360. It takes a little time to learn, but it's very reliable software for 3D design. I want to say that I've looked at that. I think it's by the AutoCAD people? I'll have to double check. But that name sounds familiar. Yeah, I guess for Hawaiian shirt patterns, you could look at people who do World War II Flecktarn camouflage. Wouldn't try it myself. Yeah, I would not attempt it myself either. It seems really difficult. But if you could pull it off and make it work really well, it would be kind of cool. I mean, funny cool, as opposed to, general. I don't know why a chapter would go with Hawaiian shirt pattern on their, but it's up to you. It's your thing. It's your hobby. Fine flower stencil and an airbrush. Yeah, that good luck on that. That could be interesting too, definitely. Let's see here. Paul Phlebas says, "Wow, Adam, with Shapeways, you just solved my Space Marine pauldron issues you get with Black Templars and Raven Guard. Thanks." Oh yeah, the thing that's interesting about Shapeways is that people can upload graphics or shapes to Shapeways, and then other people can say, I want to buy a 3D print of that thing, and then Shapeways of course makes some money off of 3D printing it and mailing it to them and stuff like that, but then the person who made the design also gets some money as well because it's a print of their design. So there are some people out there who just design all kinds of stuff. At Adepticon, Shapeways had a booth this year, and they also had one of their creators, one of their maker people there, and he's called Pop Goes the Monkey, I think is the name of his store on Shapeways, and he has tons and tons and tons of wargaming stuff. A lot of stuff he's making is shoulder pads, like custom shoulder pads and things like that, which is cool. So yeah, definitely. VJ Morph says, yeah, I'm planning to print 3D print and some custom dice, objective markers. Actually, another thing that's on my paint table right now are some objective markers. I didn't print them. Josh Mack printed them. He brought them to me at the Tabletop Minions Expo at TMX. He does Josh Mack. If you look him up on like Instagram and stuff, it's Mac the Maker, and he does a lot of 3D printing stuff. So I've been talking back and forth with him about asking questions here and there, but things that I don't maybe necessarily understand right off the top of my head, and he's been real nice about it. But he gave me some 3D printed objective markers, and it's just they look like normal, maybe 32 millimeter bases, like that shape, and then they just have like a Roman numeral 1, a 2, a 3, a 4 on each of them, and then so I've primed them, and they need to be painted a little bit more and then sealed, but they're in progress as well, and I'll post those online and stuff once they're done. But he just found those on I think he said he just found those on Thingiverse as well. So if you've got a 3D printer and you want to make some cool objective markers, because the thing is with objective markers are generally now these days you need like to have a number on them, so because the cards will be like, and this has been going on since 7th, I guess, but I haven't played, like I said, much at all in 7th. The objectives, it used to just be I need to take an objective. Well, now with those cards, you're like, you need to take objective 4, so you need to know which one's which. And in the past, we've just been like, well, the objective of the thing, that one's number 4, and then it's hard to keep track of. So just putting a number on them makes a lot more sense. So yeah. Let's see here. Semiji says, just checked Smite. In matched play, a Psyker can use Smite as many times as they can cast. Well, there you go. There's the answer. Sherman, Pop Goes the Monkey. Yeah, great designs all around. Yeah, and that's from Shapeways. And so, yeah, that particular line of stuff is really kind of interesting. There's a lot of different wargaming stuff on there, but Pop Goes the Monkey does have a tendency to focus a bit on 40K, and that's just because 40K is like the biggest of the war games right there right now. So but there's also tons of World War II stuff on Shapeways too, partially because World War II stuff you really can't copyright. You know what I mean? Like nobody copyrights the Sherman tank or whatever. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of parts. It was amazing to see a lot of the different parts that were on there, like for different stuff for different types of World War II based 15 millimeter stuff like for Flames of War, 28 millimeter stuff like for bolt action and things like that. So yeah, really interesting. Michael Strickler. Hey, how you doing? Michael was at and the Noob Painter. Both of them came from very far distances to come to Tabletop Minions Expo last month, about a month ago. So it was good to see them. The Grey Knights get their genes directly from the Allfather himself. That's why Grey Knights are immune to chaos and are considered to be better than normal Space Marines. They're also psychic and fancy, and they have shiny armor, so that's fun too. I do eventually want to make a very small, not for 40k. Well, so I would love to make an army for Shadow War Armageddon that was Grey Knights, because the maximum size of a Grey Knight's army is only 5 models. So like a single $33 box of the normal, not the Terminator ones, but the ones in regular power armor, like that's your entire army. You're done. One box, which is great. So if you do want to get into Shadow War, and you want to build the smallest, cheapest army possible for Shadow War, it's probably going to be Grey Knights, because, like I said, max army size is 5 models. So you could buy the normal, like, Purifiers or whatever they're called, the normal Strike Team or whatever, where they're not Terminators, they're in regular power armor. You could buy that box, which I think retails for like 30, 33, 35 bucks, and that's your entire army. So the upside is then I could build that for Shadow War Armageddon. But then, because of the way that 8th edition works now, too, in the future, I could just throw them in as an add-on to a detachment of my normal Imperial guys, and they could just be, and then there's this one squad of, Grey Knights who also showed up to the party. And so that's sort of fun. I like that kind of being able to switch things in and out like that. It works out really nicely. Hey, Tim. Tim was also at TMX, and he said he just painted his objective markers that he also got from Mac. And he should have pictures on the Chicago Skirmish Wargamers blog soon. Tim and Joshua came up from Chicago to the TMX, and they ran. If you saw some of the pictures that I posted on Facebook and stuff, they ran the Walking Dead All Out War. It was a big, cool jungle board. They ran some games there, so that was really cool. Let's see here. What else have we got? Dust Devilization. Hey, Adam, me and the wifey are watching while hobbying and wonder, are you wearing anything below the t-shirt? Not really about our hobby. I'm wearing shorts and shoes. So yes, I am. I mean, I don't have anything underneath the t-shirt. It's just a t-shirt. But below, I'm wearing shorts and I'm fully dressed. Thank you. So I hope to put your mind at ease. What else is this? Minus Slade says, I might have missed this. What's your favorite Dark God? I don't know. It's always been kind of Nurgle. I've always been a Nurgle fan, but lately Khorne has kind of been... I like both of them just because I kind of like the colors. I can definitely tell you I've never been too much into the other two. Tzeentch and Slaanesh. It's just... I don't know. Like, I don't like Noise Marines. I think they're kind of silly. I don't like the color schemes more often than not. That's also a big thing for me. Like Khorne, like red and gold, that's kind of cool. Although I'm never usually a big fan of burgundy, so I'm always looking for a little bit more of a warm and a little bit less of a burgundy color for that. And then Nurgle, like basically green and pussy. That's always fun. I enjoy that. It's fun to paint too. So those are kind of my two guys. And I know that Nurgle does not get along with one of the other gods, either Tzeentch or Slaanesh. I forget which. So you don't want to usually mix them together too much. At least it makes sense to me. So for me, Nurgle and Khorne are probably my two favorite. More Nurgle. Any great ideas for 40k treasure markers for 40k from bits boxes for objective markers? Yeah. So I don't have any right near here. I have some objective markers that I made for Age of Sigmar, which don't count. But the objective markers I have made in the past, they're great, but the downside is, and as I only made 4 of them, I think, which now these days you need 6. So that's problem number 1. Problem number 2 is they're not numbered. So that's also, you need to have a number. So if you want to just put a number somehow hidden on them, but still make them look like a little thing, like a little hidden ammo cache or whatever, then that's probably the best bet. But, I have used like an ammo pouch from come off of the Imperial Guard guys, just like ammo pouch. They work well. What else works well? Space Marine helmet. Then because Space Marines are always trying to reclaim all the armor that they might lose on the battlefield because they're going to use it on a new guy. Because a lot of the armor is all relic armor to some degree, so like a helmet or something like that, definitely you'd want to go back and get. Plus, it probably has someone's head still in it, and you want to be able to properly dispose of brother whatever. So those work really well as objective markers. What else works well as objective markers? If you've ever built a Rhino, inside the Rhino, there's this panel in the middle that's got like computer stuff on it. It's got a little console and a little screen and all that kind of junk. And I never put that inside my Rhino because every time I've ever built a Rhino and I've put that middle part inside that you'll never see anyway because I always glue the doors shut, it has a tendency to make my Rhino sort of like more of a rhombus and not squared properly. I don't know. I'm just bad at building Rhinos. So I just leave that middle part out now. So I've taken that middle part, that panel, and clipped off all the wall part and just left the little computer panel part, and then just set that like there's a computer thing that fell off of a vehicle, and now we need to get that back, and that's part of our objective. I have an objective like that too. They're down in the basement, sadly, so I can't show them to you. The objectives I've got up here are for my Age of Sigmar. Cam 2. So, and I think I've showed these on a show previous, which is why they're sitting here, frankly. I think there's a couple other ones, but these are the only three I can see right now. So right now, I've got this one, which has got a cool, like, skeleton skull kind of helmety thing going on next to a big rock. It's actually a column. That one's kind of cool. And this one is some sort of it's like a golden claw holding some sort of warpstone-y thing, and I've got some old bricks there. That turned out well. Those bricks, if you've watched the video I've done about how to make miniature bricks, that's where those came from. Those are actually made out of craft foam, punched out with a little hand punch. And this is some sort of scepter or something that's just like busted and stuck in the dust. So yeah, things like that. I enjoy making these, but these work great for Age of Sigmar. But with 40K, you would also need to be able to figure out a way to work some sort of a number in there so that you know that this is objective 6. You know what I mean? And then you know that this one is objective 2, because you need to be able to keep track of which objective is which when you're playing 40K right now, because those cards that give you the things that you're supposed to do, they tell you, you'll get a victory point if you're able to hold objective 1. So then you have to look at the board and go, where the hell is objective 1? Oh, it's way over there. Okay, I can do that. That kind of stuff. So what else have we got? Adam, have you ever used blue stuff? Is blue stuff like a mold, like a 2-part, and you make molds with it? Because I think I have some in the basement. Someone gave it to me years ago, but I've never used it. If that's the stuff, or is it the stuff that you put in the hot water and then you mold it? Because I've got Instaputty, which is the same stuff, only it's clear, not blue. Let me know what you're thinking there. Okay, I gotta block this guy just a second. And boom. Okay, see you later, Bill Fletcher. All right. I used the Nurgling from the Plague Bearers and made some objective markers, says Jay Thomas. Yeah, that's pretty cool too. I like. I just saw someone, I think it was on the Tabletop Minions Showcase, that was doing a really cool, like, Nurgle guy on the, I think it's called a palanquin, which is basically like, it's the Nurgle steed, and it's basically he's being carried like on a big pile of Nurglings, and that was a cool looking model. So yeah. Let me see here. Ever have any horror stories with kit bashing or custom basing? Something I always worry about is ruining a potential figure. No, I've never had any problems like that. I've never had any issue with real, like anytime I do custom basing, which is pretty much always, I've never had any trouble with that kind of stuff. I like doing custom basing just fine, and I've never had it ruin any kind of models or anything like that. So yeah, it's worked out pretty well. Kit bashing, like if it doesn't work while you're building it, and kitbashing is taking like parts from multiple models and putting them together to make a new type of model. Sometimes it doesn't work, and then you just sort of like a lot of times dry fitting helps you to figure out whether it's going to work or not. Like if you immediately like glue a hand onto the end of a wrist and you're like, well, that hand is way too small, you would know that when you try to just dry fit it, where you just go, nope, that's way too small. I would not glue first and then look and see how it works. You know, you want to look at it and go, oh, actually that's not going to be the right size, and then don't do it. You know, that's the best way. Thomas Stewart says, could you color the rim of the base instead of adding a number? Just remember that objective 1 is green. Yeah, I suppose you could. You might want to make a little card somewhere so you can remember that 1 is 1, and you know, or you can even put the numbers on the edge of the base if you wanted to. That's also a potential for objective markers. There's a lot of different options, I suppose. I mean, you could just take pennies and write numbers on them with a Sharpie, I suppose, but that's not very thematic. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I would like to actually 3D design little like broken kind of pillars, like it was supposed to be part of a shrine or something, and then have inset into each one like a Roman numeral 1, 2, 3, whatever, so that you could have those, and they would be maybe not identical, but you know what I mean. I'm looking forward to using the ones that Mac gave me. Those are going to be cool, and those. But I would like to also design something that's maybe a little bit more interesting, which is going to be a bit more design work than I may necessarily be good at right now. So with the 3D programming stuff, but once I get to that point, maybe we'll see how it goes out. Let me see here. Boris asks, do you like Horus Heresy? If so, what army and Primarch are your favorites? I've not played any Horus Heresy, so I don't know really a ton about it. I own one set of like 10 of the Tactical Marines from the Betrayal at Kelth box I got on eBay for like $20 or something like that. And I've used some parts from them, and I think it'd be fun to build them in the future for something, though I don't know what. It's going to be more of a deal, I think, where I just probably cannibalize parts for them when I'm building other guys. But I've not played any of it. I've got some friends who play 30K and love it, but I don't know a ton about it. I mean, I understand the general concept, but I don't know a ton about it otherwise, so... Kalen says, objective markers, maybe use 1 skull for 1 and 2 skulls for 2 and so forth. That's also a good idea. You could do just piles of skulls. I mean, that's an easy way. Yeah, that's a good point. Let's see here. What is the best to put on the right shoulder of a Deathwatch Vanguard veteran? Veteran pauldron or... Got a cat making noise behind me. Or chapter symbol. I think Deathwatch have very specific needs when it comes to what their shoulders are. So the Deathwatch guys come from different chapters. Deathwatch, all they do is fight Xenos, aka aliens. And so the best guys who fight aliens from all the different chapters all go and they go into the Deathwatch for a while and hang out there. And I think, if I remember correctly, I think their left shoulder is their Deathwatch shoulder, which is always a silver shoulder pad with all kinds of crazy like etching on it, and I think a big eye for Inquisition maybe, I'm not sure. And then the other shoulder, which I think is their right shoulder, always has their chapter shoulder pad. So if they were, Space Wolves, if they came from the Space Wolves, it would be the Space Wolves shoulder pad. If they were Blood Angels, it would be the Blood Angels shoulder pad. Because all their armor is black. They blacken out all their armor. And then they stay like, I don't know, I think they stay in that group for quite some time. And then I think eventually maybe they get to come back to their chapter. But I think they keep the shoulder pad. I don't exactly remember. I've not read any Deathwatch books. But I think that there's something like they don't stay in the Deathwatch forever. If they live long enough, they eventually come back, and then I think they get to have a cool Deathwatch chapter shoulder pad. They go back to their normal armor color, and then they, But so you're going to want to look into the fluff before you start throwing shoulder pads on your Deathwatch guys to know which shoulder's which. But yeah, I think that's the chapter symbol should go on the left, as I'm being told by Retro Gamers. Yeah, I thought either way. In the Deathwatch, in one of the Deathwatch boxes a friend of mine opened up, there's like tons of different shoulder pads from all the different possible armies in there so that you can then put them in there and customize them, which is cool. But yeah, I don't remember which goes which as far as that's concerned, huh? Korvac says, I'd love some basing videos. GW seems to just be like, stick it on and apply technical paint, which is great for troops, but I want to make characters in big bases special. I did a video a number of years ago about... fancy basing, if I remember correctly. I want to say it was an Uncle Adam's Pro Tips, but I'm not 100% sure. So maybe check for that first, but I would like to do some more basing videos. I am soon, well, soonish, eventually, I'm going to do the basing video about how I do my baking soda bases. If I go back over here, cam 2. So you'll notice here, it's not exactly focused. Focus. I don't know why this works, but if you put your hand in the way, see how it seems to focus better? There we go. So you'll see that it's very, very, very fine grit. I don't generally use sand too much when I do my basing. I use baking soda, and I sprinkle it directly onto CA glue. So I cover the base in CA glue, and then I sprinkle it. Some of these other chunks and parts are actually sprinkling on a little bit of kitty litter, non-used kitty litter, by the way, but I sprinkle a little bit of that on there too. The reason that I like to use baking soda is because it is so very fine that to scale it makes more sense and looks more like ash or sand and less like gravel, whereas like chunks of sand, like actual grains of sand, to scale would look like your character is standing on a gravel field. So I'm going to make a video about that soon. I started to make that video, and those of you who've been paying attention for a while have heard me tell the story about how I glued the base to my finger during the video, which then there was some swearing, and then I finally pulled it off my finger, and then as I was trying to clean the glue off my finger, I realized I glued the base to the table. So I saved that footage. That'll be blooper reel eventually, but I'm going to redo that video to show you guys how I do it. Because I've had people ask me and say, well, so do you just mix the CA glue and the baking soda and then try to put it on the base? And that will not work because the baking soda will act as a catalyst and harden up the CA glue really quickly. So yeah, so that's why I like to use it. And you just basically I put a bunch of CA glue on the base, take a toothpick, spread it all around, and then just sprinkle some baking soda. I have like a little Tupperware thing. If you look at the video I did about how to make a wet palette, there's that little sandwich, like Glad sandwich container that I use for my wet palette. I have another one of those that's just got a layer of baking soda in the bottom. So I just open up the thing, hold the model over it, just pinch and just sprinkle, just pinch and sprinkle, and then that's how I get the bases like that. So I've given you guys a freebie right there on how to do that. But eventually I'll make that video and do it right and not glue the base to my fingers. Hopefully. We'll see how that works out. So yeah. Korvac says, Deathwatch is a tithe of sorts, paid by the chapters. It can be an honor or punishment, depending on the chapter. Yep, that sounds right. Let's see here. Cruel Dirge says, I got into Warhammer a few weeks ago and found your channel. You have led me to enjoy every step of the game and process. Thank you, kind sir. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I'm glad to hear that you've gotten into the hobby. Glad to hear that you're, getting into all the different parts of it and having a good time. So I appreciate it. Korvac says, what are we talking about? But it's a valuable transfer of knowledge. For example, the Ultramarines learned about Synapse Tyranids through their members who fought Nids in the Deathwatch. They still talk about the Deathwatch. I'm sure there must be some Deathwatch Black Library books. I should look into that. I've read some of the Black Library books. I read, there's a big, thick omnibus for Ultramarines. There's one for, I read that one. I read the one for Space Wolves. And then there's two really thick omnibuses for two different Inquisitors. One is called Ravenor, and the other one is called Eisenhorn, and those are excellent. Loved both of those. Loved the heck out of them. So if you're even vaguely interested in the Inquisition at all, those two series of books, they're technically 3 novels each, but you can buy them as a big, thick, honkin' omnibus is what they're called. So then it's all 3, in one book. Those are really super good. So. Christopher asks, what are your thoughts on the big wave of Age of Sigmar model reboxing? I think that there's tons of models that are still totally viable in that game, and the fact that they did the reboxing so that you now get round bases instead of the square bases and stuff like that, I don't see that as being a big problem. I have admittedly not tracked how if they've raised prices when they do that, and I don't know that they have. Maybe they have, but I haven't tracked it. I haven't heard a bunch of, gnashing of teeth about it or anything like that. But, I know that the Blight Kings were redone. They've got the normal, Age of Sigmar type box, and they've got the round bases in there. And they've started doing that with a lot of the other stuff, you know, Terrorgeist, skeletons, I mean, just a bunch of different stuff like that. So, Jay Thomas says, "Are you hyped for the new Death Guard sculpt pre-orders coming in the next few weeks?" I'm interested in seeing what they look like. Definitely. Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what they do. I can tell you right now, of the ones that come in the main box, the new starter box, the basically the Psyker that Death Guard gets, I forget what he's called. I don't like that model. I know that a lot of people really love the models, and I do like most of the models for Death Guard, the new ones, but the Malignant Plaguecaster, I just don't like the model. Like, he's like got his hand out and he's shooting some kind of goop out of it, and they've modeled in the goop. I 9 times out of 10 when Games Workshop models in smoke or fire effects or magic stuff, I just don't generally enjoy the aesthetic of it. I don't know why. I also find it super hard to paint. For Age of Sigmar, the orcs have a shaman, and he's doing something, and there's like crazy smoke and shenanigans coming out of that. One of the last videos that Sam's done on the channel, and he'll be doing more soon, but one of the last videos that Sam's done, the painting with the pros, he's doing object source lighting on that model. Those like cool smoke and energy effects are great looking. Like, that model is a great looking model. He took that to Crystal Brush and won some stuff with it. But a lot of the time when they do like any kind of like additional effects that they add in, whether it's like smoke coming out of like an incense burner, which sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't, or like I said, just that Malignant Plaguecaster, I just don't like that model. Out of the entire box, that's in my opinion, the worst model. Everything else I think is pretty generally good. Jack Strange says, recently bought the Island of Blood starter box, reboxed as Spire of Dawn with round bases, and it's been great. Yeah, the Island of Blood box, I found one at a shop, I don't know, a year or two ago, and it was because it was an older starter box for Warhammer Fantasy, and it was High Elves versus Skaven. And I bought it, and I used the Skaven and have added them into my Chaos Age of Sigmar army here and there. And I've sold off the Eldar to a friend, or not the Eldar, the Elves to a friend who did really cool paint jobs on them. So yeah, but yeah, that was a cool box. I did not realize that that's what they used to make the Spire of Dawn, but that's a good idea. I mean, they got the molds, why not? You know what I mean? Let's see here, Adam. I'm thinking of starting doing YouTube painting tutorials for Age of Sigmar. How would I go about it cheaply and easily? Well, those two things are kind of on opposite ends. You know, if you want to do things really easy and make it easier on yourself, it's hard sometimes to do it cheap. And if you want to do it cheap, it's sometimes harder to do it easy. Because you want to have lights, you want to have, you know, like, you don't need to have a super expensive camera. You can use a relatively decent cell phone camera. I have done a couple of videos in the past, not just live stream ones, but I've done, like, I had a real problem, I don't know, about a year ago, where like everything was going wrong. My camera wasn't being happy with me, or there was some sort of issue, and I ended up having to shoot like on my iPhone, and on the front camera, so I could see myself. I had to shoot the you know, my the video and then edit it from there. So it's doable. You can do it. But yeah, it's a little bit tougher to do it easy but also cheap. If it was easy and cheap, then everybody would probably do it, I suppose. So that's kind of the trick. General Lux says, I cut the smoke from the Lord of Contagion and it looks more grimdark. Yeah, no, I could definitely see doing that too. That Lord of Contagion. If I was even going to bother building him, like I said, right now, Typhus seems better and cheaper, so I don't know that I'm even going to bother with him. But yeah, I'm just not a big fan of their smoke effects that they do, so... Jay Thomas says, I'm sad that I missed the Island of Blood. 2 armies for $80. Yeah, you can still find them sometimes. Like maybe on eBay you might find them, or you might find it on a couple different places here and there. Yeah. Let's see here. What else have we got? Sometimes Reboxing price stays the same, but you get more models. Warhammer Fantasy 16 Sauruses, but Age of Sigmar Saurus is 20 warriors. Well, that's kind of nice then. You know, that's cool. Yeah, I've been. I don't know. There's times when I still think about, well, so my third army for Age of Sigmar is going to be Stormcast. Like, I have the majority of the models already purchased because I bought the original starter box and I just added some pieces to it, and that's 1,000 points. But down the road, I thought, well, it might be kind of cool to add in some other order guys to the army. Now, the downside is that, like, if the entire army is one sub-faction, not just order, but let's say Stormcast, then you will be able to build some specific battalions and get some specific special abilities because the entire army is using one sub-faction. I have a suspicion that stuff is coming for 8th edition. Right now, the detachments that are in the main book, everybody just has to have the same faction keyword, which could be Imperium, which is why you can mix Blood Angels, Grey Knights, Inquisitors, and the Guard all in one detachment, and it's fine. Coming eventually, when the codexes come out, I have a suspicion that, say, like in the Blood Angels codex, if your entire detachment is Blood Angels, they will have the ability to then do this and this and this or whatever, whereas if you start mixing and matching, you lose those abilities. Same with Age of Sigmar. But the one downside that the Stormcast have, well, one downside that the Stormcast have is they don't really have much in the way of psychers. They do have a guy who is like anti-psycher, I think, now that they came out with maybe 2-3 months ago, and I haven't really looked at him much. All I'm saying here is that it would be sort of fun, I think, to mix some Lizardmen, some Seraphon, in with some, at least in my mind, I think it would be a lot of fun to have some lizard dudes hanging out with Stormcast. So I could see myself down the road maybe picking up some lizard guys. And my thought is maybe a not a psycher, maybe a magic user, so that, you know, that would kind of help to fill that role a little bit. I think it'd just be kind of cool to have some lizard like slinging spells and stuff like that, hanging around with a bunch of giant gold dudes. That'd be kind of fun. So anyway, that's where we're at. Algron says, what's the difference between Forge World and regular GW? Okay, so Forge World, I believe, is a company that is owned by Games Workshop. Forge World makes models that are all slightly fancier. They're all made out of resin, and they're not made of bad resin like Finecast. For a while, Games Workshop was making things out of resin that was called Finecast that was not great. The resin for Forge World is generally a lot better than Finecast. Forge World stuff is generally designed for... It's not designed for starting people who are just getting into the hobby. Resin models sometimes have a tendency to be a little warped, so you have to be able to do some work to unwarp them. There's all kinds of things that go on there. But Finecast models are like special, generally a little bit more expensive models that are designed for Warhammer 40k, for Age of Sigmar, for Horus Heresy, stuff like that. It used to be that that they weren't real well play tested, so you couldn't bring those into a lot of games. They're kind of doing away with that. Like if you were going to be playing in a tournament, a lot of times the tournament would say no Forge World, because the Forge World special rules were like kind of squirrely in comparison to the other rules, which were also squirrely but are now less squirrely, hopefully with 8th edition. Long story short, it's another company owned by Games Workshop that makes basically really fine, really cool resin models, but they take a little bit more work to make them glue together, frankly. And beyond that, they're fine, but to actually glue them together is sometimes kind of hard. So yeah. Let's see here. Building my Dark Imperium armies right now. Your channel is a big part of why I got into Warhammer 40,000. Well, I'm glad to help you out there. That's good to hear. I'm glad you're getting into modeling and all that kind of stuff. Once you get done with the building, then it's time to start painting. I hope that the videos will help you get on that thing. Got about 15 minutes left. Just making sure. I can't see the clock without doing this right now because the microphone's in the way. But the microphone should sound, I hope, better than last time we did this. There's a setting on the back of the microphone, and it was set to omnidirectional, so it takes all of the noise from all directions, which is why it seemed almost a little hollow sounding last time, because it wasn't an echo like it was a loop echo, but it was like echoing because I'm in the dining room and it's bouncing off the walls and stuff like that. Before this, I turned that setting to cardioid, which is some sort of microphone term, which means it's just now listening to this cone in front of it, so hopefully it sounds better. That's just my own dorky video stuff. So yeah. G3XE says Death from the Skies, Seraphon plus Stormcast. Yeah, I could see that, because the Seraphon are all about bringing meteorites down on top of people's heads, right? Don't they? I think that's what they do. That'd be kind of cool. So yeah. Arthur says, I've decided to take the plunge into historical wargaming, as Perry miniatures are easier on my wallet than Games Workshop stuff. Yeah, I've seen that to be the case in a lot of situations too. There's a lot of companies that do, like, especially with historicals, there's a lot of those types of things that can be cheaper. A lot of times they're metal or resin, depending. You don't see as many plastics, but you are seeing more and more companies that are doing plastics. So yeah, I think it's interesting. The only downside sometimes that I find with historical minis is it's harder to find a historical mini game that's also like skirmish, like real skirmish. Not like I've got 20 guys skirmish, but like I've got like 5 guys skirmish. From Warlord Games, the guys who make Bolt Action and Conflict 47 and stuff like that, and a bunch of other games, they have a newer game that's come out recently called Test of Honor, and it's like samurai era historical wargaming, but it's skirmish. Like, admittedly, you could be, if you're the samurai side, you're talking about 5 models. So that's pretty cool. If you're the non-samurais, then you go maybe 10, 15, maybe 20 models, potentially. Spearmen and whatnot, things like that. Archers probably as well. But yeah, they've got a starter box. It's like $50. Actually, I was talking last week with someone from Warlord, and they're going to send me a copy of Test of Honor. So I'm going to be able to take a look at it. And those are plastic models too, which is another benefit. So it's kind of, in my mind, a rare bird where it's a miniatures game, or a historical miniatures game that is truly kind of skirmish, but also made in plastic, which is very interesting. So I'm kind of looking forward to taking a look at that box and seeing what it's all about. I should be getting it hopefully in the mail maybe next week or the week after. So we'll see how that goes out. But yeah, Test of Honor is what it's called. If you're into historical, like Japanese, samurai typey stuff, that's kind of the way to take a look at it. Berserk asks, Berserk 2112 asks, can a wet palette be too wet? Yes, probably so. If there's too much water and it's like actually going over the top of the paper and getting into the paint and mixing things around on the top, yeah. If there's a lot of standing water on top of the paper, yeah, that can be problematic too. So that's, you might want to, what I usually do is I pour water in, from the sink into the wet palette and soak it, and then I'll pour a little bit back out, and then when it starts to slow down when it's pouring out, then I stop, and then that usually keeps it relatively well waterlogged but not too wet. So yeah, definitely a wet palette can be way too wet if you have put too much water in there. Are you going to do any Age of Sigmar battle reports? Yes, I believe so. Though I'm trying to think of who I would do, because I want all my battle reports to be with people who've got painted armies and stuff like that. And I'm trying to think of who. I've got a friend who's got. I've got a friend who's got a tree people. What the heck are they called? Sylvaneth. He's got a good painted Sylvaneth army. So I bet you we could probably do a battle report. That would work out pretty well. Yeah, definitely. I could see that. So yeah, I could see that coming, certainly. Andrew asks, is it possible to win Lost Patrol as the Space Marine Scouts? Haha. I don't know. I've never played Lost Patrol. I've been interested in it. I've seen it at the shop, but I've not pulled the trigger. That's the thing about the board games that Games Workshop puts out, is that, if I want to play a board game, that's cool, but I don't know if I want to build a board game. You know what I mean? I'm fine building models that I need for my army, but I'm like, I bought this board game, but now I got to build all these scouts. If I don't have a really good use for the scouts, then I'm like, I don't, you know what I mean? I just haven't, I don't know. Namir the Blind says, Test of Honor, Samurai Skirmish game? Wow, got to have it. Well, go take a look at Warlord Games, because they make it, and evidently it's been pretty popular. So yeah. Emmett asks, any recommendations for a wash to use on an orange Troll Slayer Games Workshop paint? A wash. Like, do you want to darken the thing that you're using, or do you want to just maybe you actually want to glaze? Like, are you trying to like even out things a little bit more, or are you actually trying to shade it? If you're trying to shade it, I would tell you to probably take the sepia wash that they make, Seraphim sepia, if I'm correct, and I would actually like mix it with water. Like, don't put water into your pot because that seems like a bad idea. But I'd get like, I don't know, a bottle cap or something like that, some little cup, and then get a bunch of the wash, take it out of there. Or if you had like one of those little squeezy eyedroppers, that'd be ideal. But if you don't, just load up your brush and get some Seraphim sepia into that little cup, and then start adding water to it to kind of cut it and thin it down, and then maybe half and half. And then I would start doing some layers to sort of darken the orange with that. That's the best I could think of off the top of my head. If you wanted to actually just sort of even things out a little bit and do more of a glaze, then I'm 90% sure they make at least a red glaze, if not an actual kind of orangey yellowy glaze. I just don't know what the name is. And there's other companies that make those types of glazes too. Secret Weapon Washes would be probably excellent. I know that they have some kind of color that's like an orange. And their washes are really kind of straddling the line between washes and glazes. So, yeah, I would definitely look at doing that. Rusty McNally asks, have you ever thought about doing a dwarf army? No. I don't know why. Like those new dwarves for Age of Sigmar, the flying dwarves with the cool boats and all that stuff, I've seen some amazing pictures of them. They look great. I don't know why. I've just never really been struck by dwarves. I'm not against them, like I am with the Eldar or elves in general. It's just never been something where I thought I should run a bunch of dwarves. I don't know why. Cruel Dirge asks, I'm working on Plague Monks right now while I watch this. I did not realize there were so many options to customize these guys. Are most models like this? Not all, but yeah, those Plague Monks... Especially, that Skaven kit has got a lot of different options, because you could have, I think you can have either two of the woe blades or whatever they're called, or you can have a woe blade and a staff. There's a bunch of different icons. There's different like banners and music and all kinds of stuff in there. It's a great kit, actually. And they're relatively easy to build because they're, I don't want to say they're one piece. They're not, but you're not having to like position arms and glue a head on there and all that jazz. If I remember correctly, they just pretty much are. They work out nice. I like them. I want to get mine finished eventually because they're a lot of fun. And I've got of 20, I think I've got 13 of them built. I know exactly where they are in the basement. I just need to finish them up eventually because they'd be a fun thing to add to my Chaos Army. Because they've also got the Nurgle keyword, so that means they can hang around with all the Nurgle guys and not get affected by all the crazy Nurgle's rot and all that other stuff that fires off, which is a lot of fun. Reichland Flesh Shade has also been suggested. That'd probably be a good one too. A good wash to be able to use in with an orange like that. An orange color. I could see that. Let's see. What are we a lot of talk about orange. What's the best way to paint orange? Well, I would probably lay down a base color underneath it of like a khaki and then go with maybe the orange over the top of it. You would not want to put orange over black because it's going to make it look weird and patchy, and you have to put lots and lots of let's say you know, and if you even just put orange straight over white, I don't think it would look real great either because it would be then too spotty, you know what I mean? Yeah, no, I would definitely say probably want to put, yeah, I would say you want to go over something like a warmer color, but a lighter warmer color, but not like yellow, because that's probably brighter even than the orange. I'd probably say like a khaki color as your base color. That might help pretty well. Six Gunner says, I would recommend using GW Jacaro Orange, wash it with Reichland Flesh Shade, and highlight with Troll Slayer Orange. I think that's probably a good bet right there. Adam, have you ever tried painting with oil paints to get the specific type of blending that some miniature painters use? I have not. I've heard a lot about people using oil washes, which is basically using normal oil paints and then thinning them a whole bunch with turpentine or mineral spirits, something, and then using those as washes on models. I've not tried that. It sounds like it works great, but it also sounds like it's kind of a pain. Like I know from having to use oils when I was in college, in my in fine art class, they take forever to dry. So I don't generally have that kind of patience necessarily for that. Like if I was painting something for a display, I could see doing it. But for normal gaming models, I haven't really kicked it around. Emmett says not a black or gray primer anyway. Yeah, I mean, for if you're doing it with orange, like again with me, I would probably go to a Krylon camo color for my primer slash base coat, and I would probably use one of the browns, not the dark brown, but like the khaki, and then go from there. And then do the orange on the top of that, because you got a warm color with the orange warm over the top of it, and it helps. There's a gray, especially if it's a cooler gray, it might bounce off of the orange a little bit, and it's hard to say. Andrew asks, do you have GW stores in the USA? We do, but not as many, I don't think. Or, I mean, because it's a much larger area, it's like in Wisconsin, the state that I'm in, the closest GW store is at least 100 miles away from here. There's one in the Milwaukee area, I think there's one in the Madison area, and there's one in Kenosha, which are all in the southern part of the state. There's none, I'm in the middle of the state, and there's none up here. There have been talk that they might put one in Green Bay, which is not too far away from me, but again, we're not talking about super close. So yeah, there's not as many, I think, as there are in the UK. I mean, per capita or whatever. Let me see here. The UK is covered in GW shops, but I mean, why wouldn't it be? Well, yeah, that's where they started, so it would make sense that they would be all over the place. What do we got here? We've got oil paints and turpentine are really bad for your brain. Use a mask with filters. Yeah, I could see that. I know. I mean, there's historical talk about plenty of different painters that are crazy because of probably too much of the chemicals. Especially like there's certain types of colors in oil painting. Cadmium, which is like you use cadmium to make white frequently, I think. Or no, cadmium is red? I don't know. Cadmium is bad. Don't get cadmium in your mouth. Let's just say that. Definitely. Sakaki asks, what's your favorite brush company to use? So I have a tendency to stick with Games Workshop brushes. I don't know why. I'm not super fancy about brushes, but I stick with. I bought years ago. I bought a bunch of older or of cheaper Games Workshop brushes back when they used to have like mainly like the black stick, and then at the very bottom it was like a different color, and that's how you knew which brush was which. So there was like the yellow ones, the blue ones, and then which were for wash, or the blue ones were for dry brushing. Yellow ones were like a detail brush. There was a red one, purple one was a real wide kind of wash brush. And I still use those because I've just, I bought a bunch of them, and then every once in a while I work one down to the nub, and then I finally get rid of it because I'm also not great to my brushes. Like I don't clean them as much as I should. I don't buy super crazy expensive brushes. I own one expensive brush from Games Workshop. They make a new line of brushes called the Artificer brushes, and I own one, and I've not used it because it makes me a little nervous. Like I don't want to like ruin it, and I'm pretty sure I will. So yeah, I don't use super expensive brushes. One of my cats wants to get into the kitchen. Titanium is used for white generally. Yes, titanium is generally used for white in oil paints. That's true too. Cadmium is yellow. I knew it was one of those colors. Let's see. Joe Mo says, I'm lucky. GW store is only about half an hour from me. Well, that's pretty good. Yeah, like I said, around here, like I've never even been to any of the shops in Wisconsin now that I come to think of it. The only Games Workshop shops I've ever been to have been one in Chicago and one outside of Chicago. There used to be this great, it used to be called the Chicago Battle Bunker, but it wasn't actually in Chicago. It was in Downers Grove, I believe. And actually my wife and I were nearby for a wedding, so we stopped by, and it was back in the day, it was humongous. It was this humongous store. I mean, the retail area wasn't huge, but they had this amazing gaming area it was like in a strip mall, and it was huge. And the strip mall, like they were like in one part of the store, and there was another store next to it, and they were connected to each other, and the gaming was going on in that other part, and it was just astounding. I mean, the tables, they had all these 4x8 tables, and each one of them was amazingly done, and it was really cool. But sadly, that place is closed, because now all the Games Workshop stores are pretty much run by one person. So, at a time, there's like one person who works there. So, Peter Pan says, got some 99-cent brushes yesterday. I was surprised at how well they work. Honestly, Sam uses pretty inexpensive brushes he gets on Amazon. I think it's called My Artscape. Myart Scape. And he buys those sets of brushes, and they work out pretty well for him, and he's obviously pretty good. So I don't know that you need to have super crazy expensive brushes. I think that they can be helpful sometimes, but I don't take good enough care of them to really make it so that I, make sure to get the super expensive brushes. So yeah. Especially for dry brushing, because you do so much damage to the brush when you're doing some dry brushing. So yeah. Sam Hinchy says, I live only 5 miles from my local Games Workshop. It's pretty small, though. Yeah, well, a lot of the Games Workshop shops these days are kind of just basically a retail place. You don't go there to play too frequently. But, sometimes they might have some tables to do some demos and stuff, but it's not, you're not going to go there for a tournament, generally. The Walker Jonas asks, what's your favorite tabletop game currently? Looking to expand the horizon a bit. Well, I don't know. I mean, I've been getting back into 40K. I still really like Age of Sigmar. If you're interested in historicals, but not too historical, then you could look into, I think, Conflict 47 from Warlord is pretty cool. It's based off the Bolt Action set, but it's alternate history World War II, where there's, like mechs and laser tanks and werewolves and crazy stuff like that. That's pretty cool. And then, of course, Frostgrave is also really good. Frostgrave is made by Osprey Games, and it is kind of like Mordheim was, where it's 2 warbands going into a city and trying to find treasure. But it's got this benefit from, if you play it in campaign mode, you go from game to game to game, your henchmen don't get any better. They don't get any, but your main boss, who's a wizard, and then his kind of apprentice, they can get kind of leveled up, kind of almost like in a D&D style. And they can pick up new spells and do all kinds of stuff. And Frostgrave's a great system too. And the upside to Frostgrave is that you can use kind of whatever models you want. They do make some really nice models for Frostgrave. They've made some really great plastic kits for soldiers and cultists and stuff like that. Yeah, that's pretty much about it. So, all right. Well, actually, I've gone a little bit further than 11 o'clock, and I've got to go buy a bunch of ice so that I can put it in coolers for the party later on. For those of you, I have a birthday party today, so I hope that you guys have a good time. And just to have keep hobbying, and I'll see you again in 2 weeks. That's pretty much it. That's all I got. So anyway, keep hobbying. See you in 2 weeks. Have a good day.